Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Simple Living High Thinking. We've taken a little bit of a break, but we're back. And I'm joined by Tadeo Souza. Hi, Tadeo.
Haribol, Kim.
And I'm Kim Polander, and thank you for tuning in to the Bhagavad Gita, our series on the Bhagavad Gita, which is following Tukaram Prabhu's Friday night Gita lecture at the Laguna Beach Temple. So we are on chapter 16 today. And Tadeo, what kind of introduction would you like to give today?
Chapter 16 is entitled The Divine and Demonic Natures. So good people, bad people. And I really appreciate the contents of this chapter because it gives us I would say like a soft scientific way of understanding good and bad, let's say people or qualities, because these are things that Krishna will be talking about that we can observe in the world as we are interacting with people. So he really provides this guidance. He provides us a way to identify that which is good and therefore we should cultivate, and that which is bad and therefore we should avoid. So it's a really interesting map that we can take advantage of.
Okay, wonderful. Well, let's go ahead and dive in. I like how you set it up, the good people and the bad people. Demoniac always sounds so dramatic and super scary. So being able to apply it to what that looks like in today's world would be very helpful, I think.
Right, and I thought that we could also divide this recording into three sections. One section would be focusing on the good qualities, the other on the bad qualities, and then at last, a instruction by Krishna to us. And so the good qualities, in fact, Krishna calls these transcendental qualities, which I think captures better what we're studying here today, because good qualities can be understood to be generally good. Good is objective. Good is quite subjective. People won't always agree on what is good and what is bad. But if we say these are transcendental qualities, we are stating that these qualities are really anchored in the spiritual world, and that we can mirror them in the material world, and therefore they would be good. But that these are transcendental qualities. These qualities are the qualities of the people that we can expect to associate with when we go back to the spiritual world. And so this is also a good guidance, a good map. And there are quite a few, and I believe the best way would be for us to just read them all and then dive into a few of them. Okay. So this is texts 1 to 3 of chapter 16. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, said, fearlessness, purification of one's existence, cultivation of spiritual knowledge, charity, self-control, performance of sacrifice, study of the Vedas or scriptures, austerities, simplicity, non-violence, truthfulness, freedom from anger, renunciation, tranquility, aversion of fault-finding, compassion for all living entities, freedom from covetousness, gentleness, modesty, steady determination, vigor, forgiveness, fortitude, cleanliness, and freedom from envy and from the passion for honor. These transcendental qualities belong to godly men endowed with divine nature. So again, I think that this is such an interesting way that Krishna is presenting it to us, because he's saying these are transcendental qualities, but they are available for us here in the material world. And we should therefore strive to cultivate this. And so I thought that we would dive into a few of these transcendental qualities so that they become more practical and more easily understood for us. What does that mean for us? Or what would that look like in our lives? How can we benefit from it? And ultimately, I believe that the scriptures, different spiritual paths, different religions, they are going to differ from each other, but is there such a concept as objective truth? Because if there is, then it doesn't matter if we are finding truth in one religion or another religion, in one scripture or another. These things, these transcendental qualities should be identifiable in any path because they are transcendental. They are not even from here. They're not even from the material world. They exist in the spiritual world. And some scriptures will emphasize on a particular set of qualities or another set of qualities, depending on time and circumstance. And so even though all of the scriptures may not have all of the same emphasis, nevertheless, these transcendental qualities are absolute and identifiable in the world. Do you have any thoughts so far, Kim?
Well, you made an interesting point about these qualities existing in the spiritual world. I think sometimes, like when I was growing up, when we talked about heaven in our Christian household, people didn't really get into specifics of what that looks like. What does heaven look like? Well, it's just really the fact that you made it there instead of hell. So to have it laid out in such specific terms and realizing that, oh yeah, this is what it's going to be like in the spiritual world as well, I think makes it very relatable just with that idea alone. So.
Yes, and also the concept of an objective truth, meaning it doesn't matter if you're hearing it from one religion or another, this is objectively good. So like a goodness standard. And I would argue there is, because as we're going to be going through these transcendental qualities here, I think it would be very difficult for any person to argue against these qualities and say that this is a quality that I would not benefit from. So therefore, they would be objectively speaking the truth and worthwhile understanding them, which is what we're about to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And Tukaram Prabhu, he's talked a lot about he always gets into the really tough questions. Like, and one of them is, once you get past, okay, does God exist? Is God all good? And this argument, like you said at the beginning, some people, there's good is subjective. Like some serial killer might agree that, oh, killing people it's good for me. So his teachings about how to prove that God is all good is, if you look at society, what sorts of traits and characteristics of a good, high functioning society are present. And all of these things listed here, objectively, these are the things that really support a community, make a community move forward, bring people together. People are happier based on the results of these sorts of behaviors. So yeah, I really like that we're focusing on this right now.
Very interesting point. And this is what I mean by soft science, which I mentioned earlier, that this is not mathematics or quantum physics, but this is an experiment that could be conducted with society. And we would then divide different groups of peoples or different societies and try to identify which of these groups possesses most or all or any of these qualities, and which group would thrive more. That would be a very interesting social experiment that would bring this conversation of ours to a scientific level. And I'm therefore very, very interested in this, and which is very connected to the point you made. If we can, let's say the experiments would be something like this, right? You get 1,000 people of a particular ethnicity, and let's identify these qualities that we're about to go over. And then let's see how many people in this group possess these qualities. And let's say out of 1,000, 100 people would possess these qualities. Let's say all of them, they're really good people. And then the other group of another 1,000 people would have, let's say 500 people that possess these qualities in full. Well, one group have more people than the other that possess these qualities. Then what we are trying to find in such an experiment to validate our argument is that will the group with the higher number of people with these qualities thrive more? Would they be happier? Would there be less of everything that is bad and more of everything that is good? And if so, we would be able to validate this hypothesis. So I'm very, very interested in this. And it's a great point that you made.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
All right. So, and again, another benefit is that these qualities, sometimes they can have multiple meaning, and we may underestimate them. And we may think of, oh yeah, I know this particular quality and I either have or don't have it, but there are so many angles that we can identify. And so let's just do it.
Okay.
All right, first one, purification of one's existence. That, to me, that's a perfect example of how can we expand on that? Like, how is purification of one's existence a quality? Why would I be motivated to purify my existence? I would argue that one very interesting way of being motivated to purify one's existence is to understand who we are. For example, in the Bhagavad Gita argues, Krishna tells us that we, the soul, that we are eternal, therefore we don't have to die, that we are full of knowledge, right? Like, how wonderful would it be if we were full of knowledge and devoid of ignorance? And therefore, and also that we are full of bliss, that we are constantly on a state of happiness and excitement. So that's who we are. But why do we not feel that? Why do we feel that we lack knowledge, that we are not qualified to get a promotion? Like, if we are full of knowledge, to make it very practical, then we should be able to get whatever job we want. We should be able to get a raise. We should be able to learn how to speak with beloved people, either family members or people of our society or community, and get along with them. So knowledge would allow us to thrive. And if we are full of knowledge, how come we don't have the benefits, right? Well, because we are covered. We are covered by ignorance. We are covered by anger, lust, and greed. And so to purify one's existence means to go back to who we are. And if we regain who we really are, the qualities of who we really are, then death is no more. It is through not social, but psychological studies, psychologists have identified the number one fear is the fear of death. And so if I am eternal, wouldn't it be in my best interest to no longer have to experience death? Yes, you would. And so if we purify our existence, we go back to the states of being who we are. And I believe that's very worthwhile. What are your thoughts on that, Kim?
Yeah, purification of one's existence. It's, one of the things that I was told from the beginning when I first came to Krishna consciousness was that a lot of things happen under the hood, so to speak, in the background without me having to do a lot by Krishna's grace. For instance, chanting, our meditation, our daily meditation, or doing some service at the temple to help the programs and whatnot. And that by doing things like washing dishes, Tukaram Prabhu talked about this analogy of when you're scrubbing dishes, you're scrubbing off the walls of your heart, cleansing, purifying your heart. And I always think about that when I'm washing dishes for the deities or something like that. So these things that happen as kind of a dance, so to speak, with Krishna, where I feel like I've done my best to show Krishna my intentions. And then there's been this reciprocal kind of grace that's been bestowed upon me where I have noticed in my personal life. So for me, purification of one's existence would look like, well, I used to be quicker to anger. And I would like hold a grudge like no one and just have a lot of, I guess, bitterness here and there, sarcasm, skepticism. And that has just, I have no explanation for it because, yeah, like on paper at a high level, sure, I'd like to be less angry, but that has really mellowed. I have really mellowed, and I have no other explanation than just something on the back end has been working actively, purifying my existence. So yeah, it's, you know, like you mentioned, there's just the phrase purification of one's existence. It's so general. There can be so many interpretations. So that's my experience with it.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
The other one is, I pick a few of them. Some of these I thought should be somewhat redundant, so I picked a few of them. The other one I picked was cultivation of spiritual knowledge. Again, from a generic point of view, cultivation of spiritual knowledge, cultivation of any kind of knowledge would be good. Cultivation of spiritual knowledge would imply that you believe in spirit or God or the eternal nature of your soul. But okay, so why should I do it? Like, I can do something else, right? I can go watch some sports. I can go hang out with friends. Why would I dedicate time to cultivate spiritual knowledge? Well, if, as it is the case that we have advanced intelligence compared to animals, and that animals are eating, if you look in the natural world, animals, they hunt and they eat. Animals are mating, so they procreate. Animals are defending, so they create some sort of shelter for themselves. So at nighttime, they can have a relatively safe place to sleep, let's say. So they're defending themselves in that sense, and against other animals as well. So eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, and they're sleeping. So animals, they sleep at night. What is it that we do as a society nowadays? I would argue that generally speaking, us as humans, we are eating, we are sleeping, we are mating, that's called lust most of the times, and we are defending. We take a mortgage for 30 years and we spend the next 30 years of our lives paying the mortgage off. What are we doing? We are defending ourselves from rain or intense heat. So our home is our shelter. That's how we defend ourselves. And so isn't this a pretty accurate, generic description of our society? We are a number of people eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Of course, we give very high-level degrees from very high-level universities, and our ego get all boosted up. And one may argue, oh, I do more than an animal, and because an animal cannot go to Harvard and get a law degree. Okay, suppose you go to Harvard and get a law degree, and then now you're going to go work and make a lot of money. And what are you going to do with the money? You're going to buy a house. So therefore you are defending. You're going to go eat at a fancy restaurant. So you're eating, and you're going to go exhibit that money, that intellect you have, so that you would attract a suitable spouse so that you can mate. And so I would argue that essentially that's what it comes down to. We are eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, just like the animals are doing. And except the animals, they don't have to pay taxes. They don't have to pay mortgage taxes. And they seem to be able to do all the things that we do, except it's easier for them. And they're more well-equipped to hunt and eat than we are. We don't even know how to plant our own food. But animals, they know how to go about creating, or not creating, but accessing their own food. Whereas we don't. We just go to the supermarket and buy stuff, but where did it come from? We have no idea. And so if we are doing the same things that the animals are doing, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, then is that the purpose of our higher intelligence? Really, to just eat, sleep, mate, and defend better than the animals are doing? It cannot be that that is the purpose of our advanced intelligence. So what is it that animals could not do? They could not sit here and talk about God and talk about the eternal aspect of themselves. So I would argue that the purpose of our advanced intelligence is for the cultivation of spiritual knowledge, because like we spoke before, if I am eternal, Why am I being forced to experience death? One should use their intelligence, cultivate spiritual knowledge, and purify your existence so that you can be the best version of yourself. So cultivation of spiritual knowledge. What are your thoughts on that, Kim?
Yeah, you bring up such a good point about when you break it down that way, there's not that much that separates us from the animal kingdom. So this idea of our ability to have higher thinking, to think about God and cultivate spiritual knowledge, it really is unique and a gift, I guess. So not something to not take for granted, I guess, our capacity for higher thinking.
Yeah. The next one is self-control. And that's really tough to argue for because in the society we live today, especially if it's Friday night, we want to go grab a drink and go lose our minds and just relax for a moment and forget about our platform of suffering and have that little gap in our suffering that we oftentimes mistake by happiness. And so self-control, it's kind of tough because we are tired, we are stressed out, and we kind of just want to not be controlled. We want to kind of like just let it loose. So our mind will constantly play trick on us. Oh, eat this thing, some kind of what do we call it? The deep fried stuff. No, because it tastes good. It's like sense but immediate gratification. And to control our senses, one may argue, if I have the senses, why am I supposed to control them? Like if I have a nose, am I not supposed to smell something good? If I have an eye, am I not supposed to see something beautiful? If I have an ear, am I not supposed to hear pleasing sounds? Yes, and that's part of self-control. Then what is it that you choose to see? You know, are we looking at pornography? Or are we looking at a beautiful sunset? Or are we looking at the deities in the temple? Like there's a hierarchy here. The pornography being the worst, a sunset being like, yeah, it's nice, beautiful, but not as good as spiritualists would like to be, which is something rooted in our love for God, looking at the deities of the temple. So to self-control is to control the self, to control the mind and all of the mind's whimsical desires. And so let us ask ourselves, what is the best thing I can see? What is the best thing I can hear? What is the best thing I can taste, etc.? And in that way, control ourselves and not degrade ourselves. The main point I'm trying to make here is that the mind can be our worst enemy or our best friend. Oftentimes, if we are not self-realized, which is the majority of us, the mind has been, currently is, and it will continue to be our worst enemy. And we should control it. We should certainly control the mind so that we don't have to degrade ourselves and suffer unnecessarily. So that is what's in it. That is why it's worthwhile to be self-controlled so that we can avoid unnecessary sufferings.
Yeah. Suffering is such a good way to describe some of our existences on this planet. It really is suffering, being on the gerbil wheel and going after things that just, oh, you finally get that raise or promotion, and then, or you finally get $1 million and you're still not happy for whatever reason. It really is a gerbil wheel.
Yeah. Non-violence. I divided that in two. I divided non-violence as having lower motivation and higher motivation. Lower motivation for non-violence would be, you know, whatever you do to others will be done unto you. And so do you really want to act in a violent way towards a person or an animal? Because then violence will be done to you. It's a perfect system. Otherwise, how would you learn that what you're doing is wrong, is violent? But if that violence is being done to you, then you may ask, oh, I'm supposed to be such a great person. Why am I experiencing all this violence being done against me? Well, you can use your higher intelligence that we were discussing earlier and recognize, well, it's karma. you are experiencing this violence right now because you have been engaging in violent acts yourself. So a good motivation for nonviolence, a lower motivation for nonviolence would be so that you can avoid violence being done to you. A higher motivation for nonviolence would be the understanding that every single person, whether you may like them superficially or not, is a part of Krishna. And every single animal also is a part of Krishna. The soul is inside of each body, whether it's a human body or an animal body. And the soul is part of Krishna. And if we love Krishna, why would we act violently towards a part of Krishna? And so this would be a higher motivation for nonviolence, understanding that even the animals are a part of Krishna, and therefore we treat them with love and non-violently.
Yeah, I like that distinction of the lower application of, oh, I just want to look out for myself. Like I don't want to harm others only because I don't want to harm myself. And then the higher version of that, I like that distinction a lot.
Renunciation. I think renunciation is such a great one for us to be unpacking the way we are right now, because I don't see any immediate exciting benefits of being renounced. I go like, what's in it for me? You're like, I don't want to renounce stuff. I want to have stuff. So I don't see any immediate benefit. And that's precisely one of the characteristics of devotees or spiritualists that I so much appreciate. It's almost the discovery of the future. Actually, I want to get to that a little bit later, but renunciation alone. So understanding that there is no choice. We must learn how to renounce. We don't have a choice. That's what's in it for us. We're going to have to renounce everything we have, every beloved person we know, all possessions we have worked hard for. We're going to have to renounce them, whether we want to or not. And that is called death. If any person listening to this have had the unfortunate experience of observing a beloved one final month of life, and let's say that person wasn't a person of renunciation and was super attached to their material possessions or holdings, it is such a bad way to end life. There's so much anxiety, there's so much tension and stress, because you can't let go. You don't understand that you don't belong here and that we are here temporarily. We truly believe that this is who I am. This body is the ultimate manifestation of my being. And now I'm about to lose it. My spouse, my children, my house, my degree, my intellect, my position. I'm losing it all. And it is such a threatening position to be. It is such a bad experience to have. And so if we cultivate renunciation from the beginning, I think the benefits are later, when we are having to renounce our own body because the body is getting so old and disintegrating on us while we still occupy, which I'm literally quoting Tukaram right here. He says that all the time. Our body will disintegrate on us while we still occupy it. And you have to be able to be renounced and let go of the idea that, oh, I want to go and run a marathon because I used to be able to do that when I was 20. Hey, renounce that idea because you're now 80. And so renunciation, if practiced throughout life, will really come in handy and alleviate so much of our suffering in our old age and when we are about to experience death.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I'm turning 50 soon. So this idea of my body kind of disintegrating before my eyes is very true, especially in the last 5 years. I've felt that happen. So this idea, Tukaram Prabhu, a few weeks ago in a class, he said that your body disintegrating is the best thing that can happen because it's Krishna calling you home. And I really liked that phrasing, that idea of, oh, this is the way it's supposed to be. Like it's supposed to be a reminder of, okay, get your priorities in order. Yeah, ideally it happens earlier in life. I'm always amazed at all the young people in their 20s, and even teens who come to the temple and find this philosophy so early in life. But yeah, it's supposed to be uh, disintegrating so that we can remember what's important.
Right. Aversion to fault finding. So I want to be really precise on this one here. Aversion to fault finding. If we do a mental exercise, what does fault finding look like? I would argue that it looks like this. There's you there, and there's at least one other person or a number of other people. So there's you, or let's say 5 other people. And there's one person who is not present. And you and the other 5 people are assassinating the character of the person who is not present. Simply put, gossiping. That's fault finding. And we are, again, assassinating the other person's character without the other persons having the opportunity to defend themselves. So it also manifests as a very cowardly act because the person is not even there to defend themselves. And we are here, gossiping about them, fault finding, finding faults with that person. So I think it's very cowardly. It certainly does not help that person who is not present to even defend themselves. It degrades you because now you become this person who is attracted to fault finding, perhaps to justify your own shortcomings. And now you are pointing fingers at others so that your own faults are minimized, so that it degrades yourself. We don't have to find faults with others. Rather, we can simply grow and assume responsibility ourselves. And so aversion to fault finding is a tremendous quality. We are not assassinating the character of others when they are not present. And the last thing I would say here is that it is also a very myopic act. In addition to being very cowardly, is very myopic. Because even if I'm going to give an example here. Why should I not find faults with a person, a man who raped a child? Like, doesn't that person deserve to be talked bad about? Well, I would say that this is a very myopic analysis of who that person is, because psychologically speaking, I think it's a very high number. I don't remember precisely, but I think it's about 90% of people who rape other people have been raped themselves in the past. And so we don't truly understand that person. We are just looking at the person in a particular point in time and observing and judging their actions in that particular point in time right now. But we truly have no idea what that person has lived, how much sufferings have that person had in their past that caused their psychology to be such that causes them to act in this poor way. And so we don't know about this person's past, and to be judging what they're doing in the present is a lack of interest in the person's real benefit, and is cowardly, and we're just attacking them for the unfortunate experiences that they have had in the past. And it is quite an interesting experiment if we were to then consider that person's life. We ought to be moved by compassion. It does not justify any bad actions in the present, but it does give us a much larger and a much wiser understanding of human psychology. And why do people act in such bad ways? Is because they have been subject to those bad actions being done against them themselves. So they certainly need to go through a reformatory process. That's true. but it does allow us to see them and observe them with not just anger and fault finding, but also with compassion, understanding that if I have had the same past experiences that that person had, there's a very, very high likelihood that I would be the rapist right now. And so I think fault finding it's never good and it's always bad.
Yeah. Yeah. And also I like the attitude of understanding the other person, like really understanding them and having empathy, and also understanding yourself. Because generally, when people are criticizing, they're speaking out of projections, things they see in others that they don't like in themselves, the way others treat them that reminds them of the way that someone used to treat them in their childhood. So fault finding, there's so much to uncover about your understanding of someone else and about yourself. So,
Right. Freedom from covetousness. Am I pronouncing that properly?
yeah, covetousness, coveting other things,
Covetousness.
jealousy.
So freedom from covetousness. So the dictionary definition of covetousness. Covetousness? Go ahead, Kim. Help me.
Covetousness.
There you go. The dictionary say that covetousness means a strong desire to possess something that belongs to another. So Krishna mentioned in the Gita, in the previous chapters, that material desires are never satisfied and they burn like fire. And so if we want to possess something that doesn't belong to me, that means I have this desire to have something that is not mine. I'm going to go directly to lust. So then let's say I have a friend. My friend has a wife, and that wife is not mine. She doesn't belong to me. She belongs to my friend who married her. But due to my uncontrolled lust, I want to have that wife. I want to have that woman, right? So then it is a desire that is never satisfied and which burns like fire. That's how Krishna describes such lusty desires. And so I'm connecting the two. I'm connecting this freedom from covetousness. If I don't have that, I would also eliminate this terrible lust, right? Like it has impacted so many. There have been wars that have been fought. There have been kings, even in the Bible. Not King James, but King David, who is such a celebrated person, character in the Bible. So he wanted to have another's wife and send this other who was under his room to war at a place where he would most likely die, so that the wife would be free and he could have the wife for himself. That's King David, a very high character in the Bible, not free from this. And so I'm saying that the strong desire to possess something that doesn't belong to me, that belongs to another, has many ramifications. And a controlled lust would be a benefit if we were free from covetousness.
Yeah. It really is hard to avoid this when you think about, yeah, I kind of wish I had that, or, oh, that sure is nice, especially in this world of social media where everyone's presenting these perfect lives. This has really been ramping up as an issue. So, yeah.
I think you hit the nail in the head, Kim. I went to lust and you went to social media. And I think that is just as strong of an example, because yes, like the car, the party, the birthday party, or the wedding proposal, or whatever it may be that I didn't have and this other person is having, it really bothers us and it really keeps us small. It really keeps us as not being able to be the best version of ourselves.
Yeah.
Vigor is a quite interesting one. According to the dictionary, vigor is physical strength and good health. And we have so much emphasis on that which is spiritual. And then it seems like Krishna threw this curveball at us, where now we're focusing on something that is material because it's physical strength and good health. I'm a big advocate to this, because as you know, Kim, I spent the first half of my life playing basketball, and there was a lot of physical activities connected to that, whether it was weight training or cardiovascular training, which leads to good health. And so the benefits of that are tremendous. You can sleep better at night. You can focus better at your work or at your studies. Your cardiovascular system is going to be working in an optimal way, which means you can be free from so many different diseases. And it overall improves your life. So it truly allows you to be the best version of yourself, because you could be purifying your existence, cultivating knowledge, being self-controlled, being in the environment, renouncing, not finding faults with others, and not wanting to possess things that belong to other people. You could be doing all that and be overweight and have a very high level of cholesterol, right? So I think the fact that Krishna put this in here shows us how good of a teacher he is and how much he cares about us, because we could be the best version of ourselves, which would include having a physically strong body and well fit that is that has good health. And that would be the best experience that we would have on earth. And furthermore, people that are close to us would observe this example of ours and would imitate. People usually imitate that which they perceive as being good. And so we can be this example to others that would allow people to take care of their own body and their own health. The United States spends trillions of dollars in healthcare, and yet we are one of the worst countries as far as health is concerned. We don't know how to eat, we don't know how to sleep, we don't know how to exercise, and that causes suffering, a tremendous amounts of medication, a lot of depression. Exercise alone is the most recommended way in which we could fight depression, which is such a big topic nowadays, mental health. Most people are struggling one way or another, to one degree or another, for mental health. Exercising alone is a way to improve your mental health. And so there's so many benefits. We can continue to discuss this here for a long period of time. Your confidence, because when your body is stronger and your health is in good shape, you are naturally more confident. That confidence can help you get promoted at your job. And hopefully what you're doing at your job is something good, and you're using the money that you're making from your job for something that is also good. So vigor would enhance your experience, would be such a complementary quality to all these spiritual qualities that we are discussing.
Yeah, I'm glad you called that one out, because otherwise that could have easily just been skimmed over. Vigor, it's not a word that's used a lot in our current society. I don't think it's kind of a dated word, but I like it. It's yeah, it's for all those reasons that you mentioned. The physical aspect of spirituality, so important.
The next one here, I think, is the most interesting one, as I have been looking at it lately, and I'm very eager to share this, which is forgiveness. Now, the reason why I say I'm very eager about this is that forgiveness, in my experience, has this default understanding. And a lot of people believe that forgiveness is good. You should forgive, because if you don't forgive people that may have done you wrong, you're drinking the poison yourself. And there's this like self-centered way of looking at it. And it's more or less what we default to, because forgiveness automatically implies you're going to forgive somebody who did something bad to you so that you can be free and you don't have to drink the poison yourself. And that is great. There's nothing wrong with that. And there's many, many benefits of that. I want to offer another aspect of forgiveness, which I believe is oftentimes overlooked. I would argue that if we don't forgive, if we are a person who do not have the capacity of forgiveness, I would argue that this is a misusage of memory. Misusage of memory. What do I mean by that? There are a lot of psychological studies arguing that the function of memory isn't so that we remember, oh, this thing that happened in the past, either good or bad. And then if it's something bad, something that was done against us by somebody else, then we hold that grudge and we don't forgive. And we are exercising our memory. That memory is what we are holding on to and not letting go, which causes us to become bitter and resentful and angry. And forgiveness would allow us to let go of that. What I'm offering here is the question, what is the function of memory? How should we be using our memory? And a lot of psychologists, they argue that the best utilization of memory is so that we can remember what we did that was not good for ourselves so that we don't repeat that in the future. That is the function of memory. And that we remember things that we did that were good so that we repeat them in the future, so that we get more of that. And we don't repeat what was bad and we repeat what was good. And that is the function of memory. Not that we just sitting here, remembering something that was done against me in the past and holding on to that grudge and becoming bitter and resentful is a misusage of memory.
I like that you brought up the aspect of memory. Research has also shown that memory is inaccurate 70% of the time. So, and like you said, what we choose to hold on to as to what transpired is everything. That's why cognitive behavioral therapy is so impactful, because if you can get at that cognitive level, that perception, the worldview, the memory, it's everything.
I'm very glad you brought that up. I did not know that. So you said that research has shown that 70% of our memories are inaccurate, correct?
Yeah, 70% of the time we have it inaccurate.
So there you go. So then the things that we are holding on to, they're not even real. They are inaccurate.
Yeah,
and
essentially.
And oftentimes we are using memory in that way. We are remembering things that was done against us. It is inaccurate. We can only perceive properly 30% of the times. 70% of the time is wrong, and we are suffering from that. And that's not even the best usage of memory. Best usage of memory should be, I had a terrible hangover last weekend because I drank a bunch of alcohol. Well, let me remember that so that I don't repeat that silly mistake in the future. Or I allowed anger to get the best out of me. And I started yelling and screaming, and we got into this big fight, and the cops came and people were arrested, and this bad thing happened. Oh, I should remember that and not allow anger to get the best of me again. That is the function of memory, to prevent from doing bad things in the past and continue to do, well, to prevent us from repeating the same mistakes in the future, and to encourage us to repeat the same good things of the past in the future. And that is the actual good usage of memory. And if we can forgive, I believe that we are just simply misusing our memory.
Yeah, and misusing, kind of getting back to the earlier part of the conversation, misusing our ability for compassion, for empathy, for understanding other people, seeking higher thinking. So.
Yes. Next, I want to combine a few of these. One is performance of sacrifice. The other is stated determination. And the other is fortitude. Fortitude, as per the dictionary, is courage in pain or adversity. So if you are in pain or in facing adversity, that you still have courage in that experience, right? So fortitude. So the reason why I want to combine them all is because another study that I read pointed towards the question was, why are we human beings so attracted to sports figure? People like legends like Michael Jordan, or Serena and Venus Williams, or Muhammad Ali, like people that really excel in sports. There is such an attraction. Sports is such a huge industry, and people will really get into it. You know, like one people that cheer for one team will fight against people that cheer for another team. So what is that? What is the phenomenon? Like what's actually going on in there? That was the research that a few psychologists were trying to understand. What is about our humans mentality that causes us to be so attracted to that? And their conclusion was this, that performance of sacrifice, steady determination, and fortitude are things that are innate in us. They are things that, like we were discussing earlier, the purification. If we purify ourselves, if we eliminate everything that we are not, we're going to be left with that which we are. And that which we are is so rooted in the concept of performing sacrifices and in the concept of steady determination and fortitude. Is a quality of the soul, is inherent within us. We all have that, except that in our society today, the emphasis is on the opposite. The emphasis is on, oh, let's be as comfortable as we can. We cannot be hungry. You know, we got to have 3 meals a day. So forget about fasting. Well, if it's a little bit too cold, then blast the heaters. If it's a little bit too hot, then blast the AC. You know, whoa, I want to fly to this long, different place. I can pay $10 in the economy class. I can pay $20 in the business class, and I can pay $100 for the first class. Why should I pay $90 more to have that tiny, more pleasant experience of like a flight that will last for 6 hours? Does it justify? Like it really certainly doesn't. But we put so much emphasis on comfort and not experiencing any discomfort that we're willing to pay twice as much as it would cost to fly first class, so that we can have that pleasure or the more pleasant experience, which is so contrary to the concept of sacrifices. And that is what sports figures are doing. The tremendous amounts of sacrifices that they undergo in order to become that good in what they do is unmanageable. Like I mentioned earlier, that I spent the first half of my life playing basketball, and it is a tremendous sacrifice. You sacrifice so much. First of all, 4 hours of each day you're running and jumping and lifting weights and doing all of this stuff. That really requires a lot of effort. You are not going to late night parties because the next day you have to wake up and be fully rested so you can do your sports again. So you're constantly sacrificing. And that steady determination is so absolutely necessary, because if you're not so determined to win that championship, you're going to quit. And it has to be steady. It's not that you're so determined for 1 week and then you win the game, and then the next week you're not as determined anymore. It has to be steady. You have to sustain that steady determination throughout the whole season. And then fortitude, which is courage in pain or adversity. There, I mean, I'm making all kinds of basketball references here now, but people listening may or may not know this, but I think there's a high chance they will. There is a very prominent game that Michael Jordan played. It was in the finals of the NBA against the Utah Jazz. It was like game 5 or something. They even gave a name to this game. It is now called the flu game. So it was a game where Michael Jordan had the flu. And he got the flu the day before, and then he went and played the game anyways with the flu, and he had food poisoning, and so he was a complete mess. And he went and he played anyways, and it turned out to be one of his most extraordinary games ever. It was one of his best performances ever. And he scored like so many points and did so many wonderful things, leading the Chicago Bulls to win that game. That takes courage because you're already in so much pain. Like you had food poisoning, you have the flu. Anybody and everybody would understand if Michael Jordan doesn't play today. But he had the courage to face that adversity and to embrace that pain of what it is to play like that. And he still did it, and he still went and played. And to this day, people are talking about it. So it's the example of that fortitude. So back to the research. What is it that attracts us so much in this very high level sports figures? Is the potentiality of what we could be. The lack of us being the best version of ourselves is something that very quietly hurts us inside because we are not evolving. We are not becoming who we could be. And that we are not fully aware of it, but it hurts us inside because we are less. We are not all that we could be. But then we project all that we could be into these sports figures because that's what they're doing. They are performing so much sacrifices. They have steady determination. They have fortitude. And we project all of what we could be onto these popular sports figures. And that attracts us because it allows us to live the best version of ourselves through them. And then we get so attracted to that because it is innate in us. We all have it. But if you don't do it yourselves, you have that lack because you're not doing it yourself. But you find that and you identify that and you have these visions and you live through these sports figures. And that is why the research found that human psychology is so attracted to that. What we are actually attracted to is these qualities: performing sacrifices, having steady determination, and having fortitude. This is who we are. This is what we have. And if we don't do it because we are lazy and we want to be so comfortable, we then live that dream through sports figures. And that is why people are so attracted to sports.
Oh, I like that angle. Yeah, that makes sense, where we live vicariously through this perfection of athleticism. And yeah.
Because it's so innate in us. And then if we don't do it, there's that lack. There's the lack of feeling those emotions, having that feeling of having conquered something that took so much. It took so much sacrifice. It took so much determination. It took so much fortitude of me. We are built for that. We all have that, but we are currently not doing it. And then we live that experience through others who are doing it.
Yeah.
And, we pay them millions and millions and millions of dollars to see them doing it.
Yeah. And it's kind of how all, really serious fans will wear the uniform of the person, like they're on the same team.
That's actually what we are attracted to. We are attracted to their steady determination, their fortitudes, their sacrifices that they're doing, and we are not. So we should do it ourselves so that we can be as popular as they are. And hopefully we use that for good. And then modesty. The dictionary's definition of modesty is the quality of being moderate in the estimation of one's ability. And I thought that was very interesting because arrogance, therefore, is the contrary of modesty, right? And so if we can properly estimate our abilities, we're going to realize inevitably that we are not that good and we don't know that much. And there is not much we can do. Krishna says in Gita, I enter into each planet and keep them in orbit. And we can barely understand gravity. And what you speak of actually keeping the planets in orbit. We cannot do that. And so our abilities is very, very tiny. And to be modest it's to properly estimate our abilities. I cannot conquer anger, greed, and lust on my own. I need Krishna's help. I don't have the ability to do that. So I am going to find a bona fide path, spiritual path, through which I can attain Krishna's mercy. And so, because on my own, I do not have the abilities to do it. Socrates is famous for quoting, "I am the most wise person alive because I know that I don't know anything."
Yeah.
Right? And so that modesty is really a proper estimation of our abilities. We are not that good and we don't know that much. There's a lot more that we don't know than that which we know.
Yeah. Yeah. And getting back to that theme of humility throughout the Gita, that's so important.
Okay. And so these are the qualities that I had picked. Do you want to start with another one or go back to any of these?
No, well, actually, yeah, there is one that I wanted to pick your brain on a little bit, and that is austerity.
Okay.
So maybe it would be helpful to even define austerity, but my impression of austerity is some sort of sacrifice that is, let me look it up, that is beneficial. Is that your definition or understanding of austerity?
Yes, you voluntarily undergo pains, you voluntarily accept uncomfort for a future good.
Okay. Yeah, it's just, I don't really have an exact question. I think that a lot of times austerity, this idea of, okay, I'm going through some tough times right now that I'm voluntarily doing because I know there's going to be benefit in the end. I think there's a potential for it to endorse the idea of no pain, no gain, or that we need to suffer for God. And I was just wondering what other sorts of thoughts you had on austerity.
I think it embraces everything you just said, definitely. And I would add one extra element to that. It is almost our human capacity to have discovered the future. In animal life, the concept of past, present, and future, it's not really there, right? I guess, to their benefit, to something that they do well is that they live in the present moment, and so they're not really, holding grudges of the past or full of anxious because of the future. They're living in the present, and so they're going for immediate gratification at all times. But human beings, through the concept of austerities, have discovered the future, which is the idea that I can voluntarily accept inconveniences now for a delayed gratification, which is better than what I'm experiencing now. And that delayed gratification is going to take place in the future. It is the idea behind going to a university, because it is an austerities, having to study and neglecting going party, because who wants to go study? You rather go partying. So it is an austerities to have to sit and study and be focused. It is an austerities to have to pay that money, your hard-earned money, to the university, but we do it anyways. Why is that? Because we have discovered that in the future, I will benefit from this. And so I am willing to undergo these austerities so that in the future, I will benefit from it. So I would argue that it is human beings' discovery of the future. Because if we are not concerned about the future, how will my future be like? And willing to embrace austerities in the present moment so that my future is better than what I'm currently experiencing, then I'm living like an animal. I'm living for instant gratification as opposed to delayed gratification. I want to do what's good right now, expedient gratification. And I am very ignorant of the future. What feels good right now is to smoke the cigarettes. But what's the ignorance from the future is the cancer that I'm going to get. And so I don't have this capability to emancipate myself in the future. I am not capable enough to conceive of myself as a being who exists through time. I have existed in the past, I exist in the present, and I will also exist in the future. And what will that future be like? If I am not concerned with the future, I'm ignorant of the future, then I'm only interested in expedient pleasure or gratification in the present moment. So I think there's this aspect of two austerities, that it is the human being's capacity to have discovered the future, have discovered that I am going to exist in that future, and therefore it is better for me to sacrifice something of the present so that my future will be better than my present is.
I really like that you included the word delayed. I think that really hit it home for me. It's delayed gratification. Really understanding your future, understanding that the gratitude is going to be so much more than what could be got in the immediate gratification. So yeah, that's a really nice perspective.
Delayed gratification of something that is going to happen in the future is essentially is our discovery of the future, and that I'm going to still be there. And it is in my best interest to be the best version of myself in that future that I exist. I will be existing then. And so it therefore justifies austerities in the present moment.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for that.
Of course. And then, so these are a pretty good trait, I would argue, in the transcendental qualities. And then there are the demonic qualities. And Krishna spends a few texts from the text 7 through 21. Krishna is explaining the demonic qualities very elaborately, giving examples how people that are demonic in their mentality and consciousness act. So in that sense, it's a really good guide as well, that we can take it as scientifically. Hey, Krishna is saying that people that are demonic in their mentality, they're going to act this way. So that's the hypothesis. Now, be a social scientist and observe people acting. Are there people acting in this way? Yes. Are these people more demonic in their mentality? Yes. So that has that social science aspect to it as well. And it is described between texts 7 and 21. I like to summarize these demonic qualities so that we spend most of our time talking about the transcendental qualities. And then we can summarize the demonic qualities. I think there's a good benefit to it, because instead of going so deep into all of these demonic qualities, we can put them into 3 buckets and focus on these 3 buckets. And if we let go of these 3 buckets, we let go of everything. And I think this is a better approach for the demonic qualities, because transcendental qualities is worthwhile studying each and every one of them so we can know how we can spend most of our times cultivating that quality. Demonic qualities really boils down into 3 buckets, and that is per Krishna on text 21 itself. Krishna says, let me give a little bit more of context. Leading up to text 21, so between text 7 and text 21, Krishna is describing how people that are demonic in their mentality act. And one bad consequence of acting in that way, Krishna says, is that you're going to descend into a temporary, and I'll say it again, a temporary hell. So hell is not eternal, but it is a timeout place that you get to go to and experience all the violence that you have caused towards others, like we were discussing earlier. So it's a feedback mechanism. It's a way by which you can understand and realize I'm not going in the right path. So a hellish experience, which is very suffering. Suffering is therapeutic. allows you to understand something is wrong. I am suffering. I must reform myself. That's what hell was supposed to be for, and it is temporary. So therefore, Krishna says from text 7 through 20, these are all the ways in which demonic people will be acting. And what happens to them is that they descend into hell, because that's how they will learn. I'm doing something wrong. So then on text 21st, text 21, Krishna was saying, there are 3 gates leading to this hell: lust, anger, and greed. Every sane man or woman should give these up, for they lead to the degradation of the soul. So that's text 21. So Krishna, after elaborating on all these various demonic qualities and actions and so on, he boils it down to these 3 buckets: lust, anger, and greed. And we've been talking about this throughout the Gita. If we can simply learn to control our lust, whether lust, we can conceive of lust as being you wanting a body, you want to exploit somebody. And greed is your unhealthy relationship to something. So lust is towards people and greed is towards things. Either way, it is your inability to have a healthy relationship with things and people. So if your unhealthy relationship towards people, that's lust. Unhealthy relationship towards things, that's greed. You want a car, you want another car. You have a house, you want another house. You want a job, you want another house. You're greedy. You're never going to be satisfied, and that is going to burn like fire. That's what Krishna says. Material greed is never satisfied, and it is going to burn like fire. And lust is kind of the same thing. It's never satisfied. You cannot satisfy your lust with more lust. Lust is something that you experience, and then lust got bigger now. It's like when you have an itch of some sort in your body, and you're like, oh, I just want to scratch it a little bit. And then you scratch it, only to realize that you just made it worse. Now it's bleeding. The scab came off, and now it's bleeding. And then you have this urge to scratch it again. And it's like, okay, should I be self-controlled and let it heal and not scratch it? Or should I just give in and scratch it again? Or again, it's go scratch it again. It's never going to be satisfied. And it is going to burn you like fire. And so lust and greed, we should really be sane, like Krishna says, and give these up. We should understand them. We should study them, realize them, that I'm being lusty right now, and that's not good for me. And by higher intelligence and good association, we should give up lust, and we should give up greed. And ultimately, we should give up anger. And there's a connection between these two. If you are very, very lusty and you don't get that person, or if you're very, very greedy and you don't get that thing, guess what's going to happen to you? You're going to become very angry. And that anger will increase, and you're going to become resentful. You're going to become bitter. You're going to go into depression, and you're going to reveal yourself in so many ugly ways. And that anger will literally consume you and give you cancer and literally kill you. And so this anger, this greed, and this lust, ultimately, that's what demonic qualities boils down to: greed, lust, and anger. We should have a plan to fight against these. These are the real enemy. These are the things that Arjuna was struggling with. These are the things that Arjuna was trying to help him with. I'm not saying that Arjuna was lusty. I am saying here that Arjuna had forgotten that he is this eternal soul, and that nobody's going to die, and that he should fight this battle. And so he became angry. Krishna, how can I go and fight against these people that I love? So anger got the best out of him. He got angry about the situation that he found himself in, and forgetting who he really was. And so anger, greed, and lust, those are the enemies. That's what's sitting in the mind. And that's what mind control means. By controlling our mind means that we're controlling the mind's thirst for lusty affairs, the mind thirst for greedy possessions, and ultimately the mind's anger. It's in the mind. That's where it is. It's good to know the enemy that you're fighting against and where they are. They're in our minds, and these are the enemies. Plato said it takes a person more courage to fight against these, lust, greed, and anger, than it takes a soldier to fight in the battlefield. Literally, because at the end, Arjuna fought in the battlefield. And so, but to fight against these things, that's the real fight. That's the real war. If we can eliminate lust, greed, and anger from our hearts, we're going to eliminate all of the wars in the world, all of the conflicts of the world. If we really want world peace, which seems to be such a pie in the sky type of dream, if we really want world peace, that's how we do it. We eliminate lust, greed, and anger from our hearts. There will be no more war. There will be no more fights. Everybody would get along. Everybody would respect one another. And things would be good. These are the enemies: greed, lust, and anger. And Krishna says it himself. There are 3 gates leading to hell. I think it's such a wonderful way that Krishna puts it. You can go to hell by taking 3 paths. There are 3. You can choose which one of these you want to take. You can go to hell by being lusty. You can go to hell by being greedy. You can go to hell by being angry, giving into anger. Contrary to Christianity that argues that there's a devil or Satan or whatever it may be that tempts you, and it's the king of hell. We are flipping it. We are putting the responsibility on your hands. It is you who takes yourself to hell by not controlling lust, greed, and anger. And Krishna says every sane man and woman should give this up. And I like how Krishna puts it too, right? If you don't give this up, you're insane. So, yes. What are your thoughts on that, Kim?
Yeah, it's such a heavy text when you just read it, like 3 gates leading to this hell, and every sane man should give this up. The degradation of the soul. It's such a heavy verse. And I also wanted to point out, just in case any listeners are new to this podcast or Krishna consciousness, that in this text where Krishna says there are 3 gates leading to this hell, we're not talking about leading to hell as in the hell of Christianity, this eternal kind of miserable existence. Krishna says gates leading to this hell. So what does this refer to? So to find out what this refers to, we look at the preceding text of text 20, repeated birth and death amongst the species. You can never approach Krishna. You sink down to just these cycles, like that gerbil wheel of lust, anger, and greed, and repeated life over and over in this kind of pointless existence, or existence of suffering, as you referred to earlier. So I just wanted to call that out in case people are thinking like, oh, hell, and they have that connotation in their mind of what hell is when they hear that word.
Thank you so much for doing that, Kim. It's absolutely necessary, that distinction to be understood. And you did it so expertly by going to text 20 and seeing what Krishna has defined as hell there. And yet, this birth and death, repeated birth and death for the soul, which is eternal, is a hellish existence. Again, if you're constantly dying and you're eternal, you're constantly having the experience of death, that's a hellish existence. Not necessarily the hell that is like fiery and you go there to suffer, but if you have a mind that is covered by anger and greed, you're living in hell. There's no difference. Like, hell isn't so esoteric as we may think. There's so many people living in hell right now. Hell isn't this place that you go to eternally and you burn. Hell is the place that you are in when you are depressed. Hell is the experience you have when you have to die due to old age and diseases. That is hellish experiences. And so if we are eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss, what are we doing here? Krishna says, get out of here. And what's keeping you here are these 3 gates: lust, anger, and greed. So we can summarize all of the demonic qualities into these 3 buckets, and we should have a plan to fight against these. These are the real enemies. Nothing else. It's not Osama bin Laden. It's not the giant oil companies. It's not social media. It's not anything outside of our own minds and hearts in any other form other than lust, greed, and hate.
I like that distinction. That's really an important distinction of, hey, we have control over our experience, the choices we make, and then the resulting experience from that. So this really brings to mind for me the gift that karma is, or rather karma pal. Karma traditionally refers to action, and then karma pal is the fruit of the action. So that's more what in the West we think of as karma. But this life of kind of the fruits of our actions, the results of our choices, where I could see conceivably if someone is just not getting it life after life, they could be in this cycle for eternity. But the benefit of karma pal, or the results of our choices, is that, okay, there's maybe a little bit of a reward punishment system going on, where if we make really bad choices, we're going to invoke really bad results. And so that if we're smart, we would make better choices and eventually get out of this eternal cycle of repeated birth and death, just mired in lust, anger, and greed. So I have a new appreciation for karma, for the fruits of our actions.
You have inspired me to share something else. The context of what I want to share is, how can we conceive of Krishna, God, as all good if he himself creates a situation where we can slide down to hell? Krishna is playing with fire. He's allowing us to develop angry thoughts and lust and anger. And then he created this hellish place. Like, why are we here? Like, who created it, right? If it's hellish and Krishna created it, then is he all good? So that's the problem that one may have in their minds. So what I want to propose is this: hell isn't where things end. Punishment is not the end of things. Here's the following quote: Krishna's blessings and Krishna's punishment are both meant for our benefit. And in that way, Krishna's intentions is always good towards us. Whether Krishna is blessing us, because you brought up the system of karma, which is a system that can take you up to a heavenly planet, which that's your reward, or it can take you down to a hellish planet, which is your punishment, or it can keep you here in an earthly planet, which is you're trying better, right? However, if we take Krishna's position as it is, and we see it through what it is, both Krishna's blessings and Krishna's punishments are not distinct. They're not different from each other. From Krishna's position, from where Krishna is, with the vision that Krishna has, when he's punishing us and when he's blessing us, his intentions are the same, our benefit. Krishna only has our benefit in mind when he is either punishing us or blessing us. And in that sense, Krishna's punishment, let's say repeated birth and death, or temporary hellish existence, the intention of his to give us that is the same as his intentions are when he's blessing us, because Krishna is all good and he only wants what's good for us. And if you're wrong and you need to learn, it is good for you to realize that you're being wrong. And punishment is necessary. Suffering is therapeutic for you to realize you're doing something wrong. So the act, Krishna's intentions, when he is sending us to hell or heaven, is the same. Krishna's intentions is not to just punish us for the sake of punishment itself, with no ending in sight. And eternal hell does not have a good intention, because there's no possibility for you to ever get out of there. You're going to be there forever. It's eternal. So Krishna, I couldn't make the argument that I'm making right now, because Krishna would have no other intention but to just have you suffer forever. But no, if you're going there temporarily and then you get out, Krishna's intentions is your benefit, just as it is when he's blessing you.
Mm. Oh, I really love that. Yeah. Yeah, so nicely said too. It reminds me of a parent-child dynamic when you're trying to teach your child life
Absolutely.
skills.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When I punish one of my sons, my intention is his benefit. When I reward one of my sons, my intention is his benefit, so that I'm rewarding something that he did good, so that he can do more of that in the future. Hopefully I'll create some good memories that he can remember, so that he can do it again. That's what memories are for. So then I reward him. And when I'm punishing, hopefully I'm going to create some memories of this bad thing that happened when you act wrong, so that you don't act wrong again. But that punishment, my intention is his benefit. So from my position, I'm not angry at one and loving the other. My position, if it's proper, is to benefit them always. And both are meant for their benefit.
Yeah, yeah, so beautifully said. Yeah, it really comes down to the notion of, do we believe that Krishna is our well-wisher, or just this God who's looking to punish us at every step of the way? And so,
Right.
yeah.
And then what I thought would be very interesting, given the context of what we did here with chapter 16, is to finish by saying, okay, there are these transcendental qualities and there are these demonic qualities. But like we mentioned in the beginning, good and bad is very subjective. So one should then ask, does such a thing as an objective good standard exist? Is there something that is objectively good and something that is objectively bad? And if there is, how can we know about these things? Because we just talked about these qualities. I argued them to be objectively good. All the transcendental qualities we went over, I cannot conceive of a way that if you were to act in that way, something bad would happen to you. And all these demonic qualities, let's say they're bad, I cannot conceive of a way that if you were to act this way, that something good would happen to you. It could be temporarily, but in the long run, something bad will happen to you. So how can we know more about this? How can we continuously understand what are transcendental qualities and cultivate them? How can we continuously understand what are demonic qualities and avoid them? Well, Krishna says in the very end of this chapter, consult the scriptures. And that's what I thought would be a good closing remarks for our episode today, is that scriptures are different. They are meant for different people in different times, different circumstances. However, I think that's the main question. Does an objective good exist? Does an objective bad exist? Scriptures are going to be expressing them or teaching them to the audience appropriate given the context of time and circumstance. So there, just because some transcendental quality is not in my scripture doesn't mean it's not objectively good, which means that I can embrace all the transcendental qualities of the scriptures I read, and there might be some other transcendental qualities in some other scriptures that I may also embrace because they are objectively good. And so scriptures are there and we should consult them, but we should do so in an intelligent way, because there are people there with demonic qualities using scriptures to trick us, to exploit us, so that they can benefit by exploiting us. And so we should have good discrimination as to what is an honorable scripture. If a scripture is causing me to feel anger, greed, and lust, That's not objectively good. And we should have the discrimination to understand that. And that the person who is presenting this particular scripture to us is of a demonic mentalities themselves. So we should not have any blind faith. We should be very intelligent about choosing the scriptures we will follow, because it's going to determine how we live our lives. But having found honorable scriptures being presented by honorable people and teachers, we should then consult the scriptures, because the transcendental qualities are going to be highlighted there, and the demonic qualities are going to be highlighted there. And it will be to our benefit to embrace them. It is nothing different than what companies do in countries. Companies have a mission statement, a set of rules and regulations by which everybody is guided. Everybody follows those mission statements, those positions, descriptions, etc. Those are the rules and regulations. A country has a constitution. The constitution of a country is the book that we go to when we are in conflict with one another. We hope to create this constitution, which is as objectively good as possible, so that in times of confusion, we can default to the constitution and see who is right and who is wrong. And there's a whole Supreme Court whose job it is to continue to maintain the Constitution as objective as possible, and in that way, guide and orient society. So we are doing that. It's very natural. We are doing that at the country level as we organize society. Companies are doing that because they have their books, their rules and regulations where they are going to do what they're not going to do. I would argue the families should have their constitution. Families should understand, like, what are our goals? What is our top? What is at the top of our hierarchy value? What is the top of our values? And a family should have that. What are the things that we're going to do? The group should never sacrifice itself for the benefit of the individual. The individual must fit within the group. If it's a family, if it's a company, if it's the country, those systems are there and they exist, they're natural. Similarly, the system of scriptures exist for our spiritual benefit, for our ultimate benefit, and they're there. And if we use our intelligence to discriminate against honorable and unhonorable teachers and scriptures, we should consult them and follow them, because the scriptures are there to help us.
Yeah, it's a really important distinction about what scripture are you signing on to, what scripture are you adopting as your value system. I like also how you pointed out having a family value system, family mission statement, so to speak, that's often not focused on or called out in specifics.
There should be one, because it helps the day-to-day conflicts. If we have identified what are our values, what are the things that we are going to do, what are the things that we are not going to do, so many little arguments can be dispensed with, because we already understand we are not going to sacrifice our whimsical lust, greed, or anger, because we are a part of a group, and the group is higher than the part. And so the group together can decide. It's like it's not a dictatorship. It is a democracy, but not a blind democracy, guided by scriptures, right? So what are the objectives of our family? What are our value system? Families should have that. You would help them eliminate the unnecessary day-to-day pains and confusions.
Yeah.
And again, it works for companies. It works for countries. Countries have a constitution. If you want to live in this country, you need to follow this constitution. Otherwise, the group is not going to sacrifice for your individuality. So why should we not incorporate anything that helps into our families? And if it helps a whole country, it can certainly help a family as well.
Yeah, good point. All right. Well, we spent a good amount of time on chapter 16. I really enjoyed this conversation.
So did I. Thank you for providing the opportunity for us to go over these things.
Yeah, thank you. And so next week, we will be going over chapter 17. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you for your time, and I look forward to diving into chapter 17 next week.
Thank you for your time, and I'm looking forward to it right now.
Yeah, and thank you everyone for tuning in and joining in, and we'll see you next week. Hardy Bol.
Hare Krishna.